Hello, and welcome to the Grand Cinema Hotel, a podcast hosted by two friends who love cinema. I'm Gus, and I'm joined with my co-host Alvaro. Tonight, you'll be staying in Room 160, Infinity Pool, the brutally dark satire directed by Brandon Cronenberg. So go ahead, get comfortable, and throw on that Do Not Disturb sign as we try to survive a vacation from hell with Infinity Pool.
Mr. James Foster, you'll have to come with us.
Here, the punishment for any crime committed is death.
What did you say?
But for a significant sum, we'll build a double to send in for your execution.
What's going on, all my hedonists, and thank you for checking back in to the Grand Cinema Hotel. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit all the buttons. As always, I'm joined by Alvaro.
What's up, guys?
And after a small break, we are here to talk about a film that we were very, very excited for. That would be Brandon Cronenberg's latest film, Infinity Pool. Alvaro, going into this film, how excited were you?
I think we saw the trailer for this movie a couple weeks ago at the end of last year, and I
saw it quite a bit.
I was really happy to know that we were getting this when it's kind of known as slow months for the most part. It kind of made me feel like we were starting off to the year really strong. Like we had talked about in the episode before this, I had watched Possessor just in anticipation of this film. And I could say maybe now the hype for it maybe is a factor as to why I feel the way I feel about it. But at the end of the day, I did enjoy this film. So, it's an interesting take that I feel like I'll have for this film. Not really how I feel about a lot of other films, but we'll get there.
So for me, in the lead up to this film, I would say there was probably an equal level of excitement between the two of us, which is not always the case. I would say we were excited for weeks, if not months, honestly, because we did know that it was coming out. So by the time the movie rolled around, like the excitement level was pretty tangible. We were pool before, I don't know if we could have been more hyped for this movie. And I think it's because we were expecting it to go up these dark, disturbing, alleys that we find very interesting to watch in the movies. More in the movies than in real life. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, these are the kind of things where I'm like, yes, give me all this sicko, creepo, weird shit, right?
Yes.
But I did enjoy this film. Not as much as I was hoping, honestly. But like you said, we'll get there. I wanted to start off just by kind of setting the scene for the movie, who's involved, all the names and things like that. So it's written and directed by Brandon Cronenberg. And if you had listened to our last episode on Possessor, that's why we're here in general. The concept for the film I saw was inspired by a 2014 short story that he was, or scene that he was writing of a man witnessing his own execution and a bad vacation that later. So this is something that's kind of been brewing around for a while, and it's cool to see that we're finally getting it. But the film stars Alexander Skarsgård, Mia Goth, and Cleopatra Coleman. We are obviously big fans of Alexander Skarsgård and Mia Goth. One of the points I had made to you in the lead up to this movie is that it kind of has everything we're looking for. A director with a exciting vision, two actors who are kind of known for doing out there films and making bold choices, right? And then on top of that, just the themes and elements that go into this movie, and the genres as well, the sci-fi, the thriller, the lo-fi ambient techno, or not techno, but electronic music. Just it has a lot of the things that we're really into, that like I know it sounds stupid, but it's like the kinds of, like, if I could make a movie, this is the kind of movie I'd want.
Yeah,
to make,
exactly.
Right? I don't remember if we had mentioned that in the Possessor episode, but that's something I've been kicking around in my head since then is that Brandon Cronenberg makes the kind of movies that I think I would want to make.
Yeah, or I'd be like, I think I could do this.
Some of the more exciting parts of the movie for me are the cinematography by Kareem Hussein, who is a director himself, and he's actually shot all 3 of Brandon Cronenberg's films. And the music as well plays another big factor in this. It's composed by Tim Hecker. He's a critically acclaimed Canadian electronic musician who's collaborated with another favorite of ours, which is Daniel Lopatain, the guy who scored Uncut Gems.
Got it.
So
That's a good score.
you know, this I thought. Are you saying Uncut Gems or this?
Yeah. Uncut Gems is more. It resonates with me more.
Oh yeah, but I did enjoy this one, and I was gonna say sometimes composers, just the way that the music will carry the film will make me want to watch another film that I'm not interested in. But it's like if that person's composing it, I assume it's going to be a certain type of film.
Yeah.
So I would watch another movie that this guy has composed just off of what I think I would get from it. I imagine it'd be something else that's up my alley.
Yeah.
And then it's edited by James Van de Water, and I think this is one of the other standout strong performances that's in this movie is all the editing. It's a really fun movie in that sense, you know. It's how would you say? I wouldn't say it disturbed my senses, but it didn't it engaged them, you know what I mean? Like I felt all of the it's like taste, smell, scent, you know what I mean? Like all of those things. Like I felt like the way that it was edited really engrossed me in the world. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
No, yeah, I agree with you 100%. So I get what you're saying.
So I wanted to talk about the theater experience a little bit as well. We saw this on a Thursday night, right? Preview showing. I would assume most of these people were A-listers.
I like to think so.
Do you make that assumption as well?
I like to think so because I think those are the people who are actively in the theaters all the time and would want to be seeing this on Thursday. Couldn't wait.
They
right?
had probably seen this trailer.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also think that Neon does a good job of marketing their films online. So on Twitter and in Instagram and things like that. Within the film world, at least on Twitter, I did see this movie bouncing around a lot of excitement for it.
I did too.
So I think they did a good job. It's kind of like a film like Barbarian where you would think like, what are all these people doing here, right? But these must be the people who are very similar to us, right?
I think that's where it's a little surprising for this movie was a bigger crowd than we usually would see at these films, which always makes for an interesting crowd reaction. I never really know how to take it. Some people are very audible about how they feel about the movie at the end, but I always take I have seen a lot of people or a lot of audiences who really like the film. I think when we went to go see The Fabelmans, we were in a lot more cinephile type area. People will clap, when they really like something, which is something.
I don't remember if we got any claps in this or not, but I did hear one, heavy sigh, and I did hear one or two what the fucks, honestly.
So yeah,
but
so did I.
To that person's credit, it's not like the film isn't trying to lean into that.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that's, Brandon Cronenberg probably was like, oh, and when I write this, someone's gonna be like, what the fuck? Again,
yeah.
I do think that was warranted. I wouldn't be like, why is this guy tripping?
Yeah.
It wasn't like when we went to go see Tar and that old man was yelling at the screen because the credits were in the beginning.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
And it's like, aren't you used to this?
So it's a 7:00 preview on a Thursday night at our local AMC, and it's damn near sold out. So that was exciting. I wasn't expecting it to be. I remember making a comment to you when we were walking into the theater. I was like, so are we the only two? And no, it was pretty much sold out, which was kind of exciting. And it makes me wonder how this film's actually going to do. So far, I think it only has like 1 million off the first 2-3 days. But I will like to see the progression of this movie. Is it a straight to streamer in 3 weeks, or does it have some kind of word of mouth and build up and maybe kind of leg itself out in a world where there's not that many movies to watch at the moment?
Yeah, that's true.
But with Knock at the Cabin next week, I have to imagine that this film is going to be straight to streaming in about 3 weeks or so.
Yeah, I think Knock at the Cabin has Universal's promotion, which I always feel goes really hard.
Well, it's a major film versus a very tiny indie film.
Yeah, we're talking about also M. Night Shyamalan, who.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the budget of Knock at the Cabin was $100 million plus.
Yeah, that's true.
Like we're talking about a guy on that level, not just some dude who's made 3 little indie movies.
Which we are very excited for as well.
Yeah. Not to get too ahead of myself, but I can't wait for next week.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to do our first thoughts and opinions. I know you said you kind of had an interesting take on the film, so I'd like to hear it if you're ready.
I think talked about just in connection to some of the previous comments. The guy doing the heavy sigh at the end. I don't know if me and him did the heavy sigh in the same reasoning. What I wanted to say is that I do feel like maybe we were a little bit too excited for this movie, and my expectations grew too high for this movie. It has everything I want in it, in a film that I thought this was, but I don't think it necessarily dives too deep into any of them. And I think I ended up wanting more from the film, but also I ended up really feeling like it has all the components and wirings and extras to build the setting, like you said, where me as the audience member feels kind of engrossed into this world. But I did feel similar to the way that you felt to Crimes of Future. I felt it was an interesting comparison. That the storyline here just felt very, very what was the end game here? What was the interesting part that was supposed to draw me in or make me feel like this movie was trying to say something, or what is it trying to say? That's where I felt the movie was really its weakest part, and not necessarily I'm gonna say, oh, it sucked completely, that part, but I just felt like it was very neutral. It didn't seem like there was any all the thoughts that were more, taken care of, I thought were the stuff that we kind of already mentioned that we really liked. Like it was about making the setting there and kind of having certain performances from actresses, or kind of wanting to set these premises for the film that aren't necessarily too far off the realism for me, I guess. And I think for some people they might be, but I think that was a point that we made, that I could see this being real, so I don't think this is too outlandish for me.
Yeah, like it's got sci-fi elements, but this is not really a sci-fi movie at all. So I kind of wanted to elaborate more on the things that you were kind of the path you were going down. For me, the name Cronenberg is synonymous with disturbing and vile. You know what I mean? Like I think of like, okay, this is going to be one of the sickest things I've ever seen. And much like my first viewing of Crimes in the Future, I found it to be a little tame and unsatisfying. And that could just be me holding that name up to a high regard of thinking like, okay, this is going to be one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. And I didn't feel that way at all. I actually found the film to be quite dull and quiet in some moments. I could have just been a little, stoned to the bone, because it's a recliner chair. I'm wearing my cozy jacket, and I'm a little too stoned, and maybe that's on me, but I'm willing to give the film the benefit of the doubt there. But it almost put me to sleep a few times. I'm not going to lie. There was a couple moments where I was closing my eyes, just like I could fall asleep right now and I wouldn't be that mad, but I knew I had to power through because it wouldn't be fair to a movie to fall asleep in it and then do a podcast episode on it.
Yeah.
So I tried my damnedest to, keep my eyes peeled as much as I could. But because it was so dull and quiet in moments, I was like, I'm really not missing anything.
I think that's where the fact that there was moments of where I felt exactly like you, where again, we're in the same kind of daily routine here, so maybe that's what I always give the benefit of the doubt here. But there's a slower movie that I saw yesterday in the same type of factors that I had today, and I did not find myself falling asleep in it. And it should be a movie that I was like, well, if I was really tired or really stoned, like you said, I'd probably fall asleep in this movie too. But it's the fact that this movie, we've kind of talked about, I had dove into heavy into his dad's work, and some of his later phases in the movies or his films have become more mature and kind of only have small components of societies that might be weird, or these sci-fi type-esque components that make it a little bit off reality, But I do feel like Brandon Cronenberg isn't really there yet at that stage as a director, and I didn't really feel like, if you want to think this movie is deeply commenting on things that usually relate to like heavy dialogue, like kind of like Tar, you know what I mean? Like usually when I expect things that do dive deep into his themes and kind of have a take or something, I always do expect some emotional depthness there, but I did feel like this film had a message, but I don't really necessarily feel like it's quite clear what the message was, honestly.
Yeah, I get you there. I don't think that it's really saying all that much, honestly. I do think that this is what the overall message of the film is one of the weaker aspects.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of one of those movies. I wouldn't say it's a character study, but our main character unlocks the real version of themselves, but I don't find the real version of themselves to be all that interesting.
I guess it's because also that was the big opponent to me is our main actor here. Yeah, played by Alexander Skarsgård, is the hero's type journey that I didn't really feel like. Did he need these things to happen to him to really realize these things about himself, or was he kind of already aware of these things? And I feel like he's kind of already aware of these things. And like I said, this is, again, what's hard about these comparisons that I'm making is I am comparing it to Possessor. So it's not like I'm comparing it to another film like by another completely different director and, oh, well, look how they did it. It's that I felt like Possessor, at least I felt that at the end with our character, one of the main actresses in the character, Angela, what's her name? The actress from Possessor, sorry.
Andrea Riceborough.
Yeah. I did feel like there was a closing statement there and like a closing resounding message with her character there and how she ended up feeling about her family and kind of like how capitalism takes, your life from you. But in this one, it did kind of feel like we just get a story of somebody who's really, I don't know, breakdown of misogyny, honestly. And it's actually one of the favorite themes that I've found myself liking in other films, most notably in like Lost Highway. But I didn't feel like this film really took advantage of how crazy it could have been, honestly.
Yeah, I get you. Going off the Possessor thing, yeah, I know it's going to be hard to not compare them, but I do think that Possessor is a better film. I think it's a more well-executed vision. I think that from beginning to end, the film makes not that I care if a movie really makes sense or not, but in the case of Possessor, it's a straight through line. You know what I mean? And in this film, it's not that I'm lost or anything like that. Like, I don't need an explained video to tell me what happened. I just don't find it to be that interesting. And I don't know, maybe what does it say about us that a film that is being considered so disturbing and violent, what does it say about us that I'm like, I don't know, this is kind of tame. Like, maybe that's a question for a psychiatrist, but this is what podcasting is for.
Yeah, I mean, that was another interesting part we did want to bring up, that it's being promoted by Neon. I don't know if in a joking way, it doesn't seem like a very joking way, that this film is one of the most disturbing films ever. Maybe that's also making me be like, okay, you guys need to relax. I don't remember seeing this type of promotion for something even like Titan. And I did end up feeling there's moments in Titan where I was more sickened than I was in this movie.
Yeah,
you're right. And
Titan is one of my favorite films of the last 5 or whatever years. How whatever. I know it's new and it's easy to say that, but it really is.
No, yeah.
This movie, I don't know how often I'll be revisiting it.
But I mean, like, to because me too, I agree with that sentiment. But I guess like the fact that Titan isn't necessarily out there to, with the sci-fi elements, twist and put me into this society that's really crazy. It's one person, but I did feel that the way that I'm disgusted in Titan is what this movie was trying to evoke, and the fact that I was in it for what you said. These are the things that we like. Some of the artsy scenes here, I always remember. We always make the joke like someone's went to film school, but I'm there for it. I think those are the parts that really bring me in. And Possessor with the trip out scenes that we talked about,
the hallucinatory sci-fi dreams aspects.
Yeah, a lot of
I love that stuff. I don't care how cringe that could ever be considered. Yeah, put 4 gels on a light, like that gets me every time.
Yeah, I mean, I understand when it's overblown and the whole movie is kind of that's its own style, but whenever
Nicholas Winding Refn, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, whenever this whole segments though of emotional transaction or of these elements or emotions, I think colors always really do a good visual or a visual aid. They really complement those type of things, so I'll always be there for that. But I did feel like there was a point that I had brought to you after when we talked about this film the following day, where, not to get too ahead of myself, but the small sci-fi element of here where there is, clones. I felt like
hey, I don't think you're getting too far ahead of yourself. That's in the trailer.
in the trailer, yeah.
That's open knowledge for anybody.
Okay, so like the whole clone thing, we were unsure if that is a driving component of what the conclusion is trying to get you as the audience member to think about, and the fact that I felt like, am I giving? Because you told me, I was like, I think you're giving the movie too much credit. I don't know. That almost makes me feel bummed out that I didn't kind of even have a somewhat answer to be like, am I giving this movie too much of a thought when
it's not that
it's
deep.
not that deep? Because it's I want it to be deeper, or did I miss something? And I guess that's a really great part with watching it with somebody else that does the same thing that you do, is that I don't feel like, oh, maybe you were in a different state of all these different factors, right? Maybe that's why he saw it differently. The fact that you saw it in the same theater, same time, same schedule that we were on really makes you feel like, okay, it validates or invalidates how I might feel about something like that, and then that's to kind of jump on to some of other people's comments that I've seen on this movie. Always kind of talk about how I do like looking at Letterboxd's reviews that people like thoroughly, like real reviews.
And
Obviously,
that's funny
there's
because I don't like reading Letterboxd. Yeah, so that's one of the things we don't have in common is I don't give a fuck what anybody says on Letterboxd.
yeah, but like there is always a majority number that moves up or down. That's just like a general number.
Yeah, the rating system, you can't, I guess you can't deny that, right? Like, okay, most people like this, most people don't like this.
Or because I will say that most films that we watch that are independent and are good films, they always sit at the like 3.5 or anything higher range. Anything below that, I always end up feeling like there's people who really do not like this movie. Because the 3.5 seems to be like an average person never really hates any movie, right? Unless it's...
Most movies are not worth hating.
Yeah.
They're just like, okay, it happened.
Exactly. So, but this movie went from when a small amount of people have seen it, went from a 3.9 and it's like slowly dropping all the time. And I see those 3 stars getting bigger. And I think that's when I start to resonate. Like, I'm not the only person who felt this way. Yeah. I'm like visually watching like and reading these comments is all the same that we felt like I'm in this for what it is. That's why I came here. That's why you had me with the name, but there's so many things that you talk about here, address here, that I feel like just fall flat because the storyline, the script, or just kind of feel like it was the part least cared about. And that's kind of how we felt, kind of talk about when some of Martin Scorsese's movies, some of his worst movies are still better than some of directors' best movies. I still do enjoy this film, but I do think that I see a really good film in here. And I think that's what bugs me.
Yeah, like I'm biased, of course, to sci-fi thriller, mystery, hedonism,
horror,
blood gushing violence and hallucinogenic orgies. Like, yes, very yes. You know what I mean? Like I'm the haha sicko like me. You know what I mean when I see that? But I do wonder with all the stuff you're mentioning about Letterboxd and how you can see the number changing, right? And obviously numbers are, this is irrelevant. This doesn't actually matter.
Exactly,
It's
it doesn't.
just interesting conversation points. But I'm wondering. I'm wondering. It'll be interesting to see if the people who are like us, who were like, no, I knew what I was getting into, I was expecting more, if they're more disappointed than the average moviegoer who might not have any of that.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, whoa, this blew my mind. You know what I mean? So that'll be kind of interesting to see. I hate to be like, we're not normies, you know what I mean? Because obviously we're all normies. But I wonder if maybe someone who's not on Letterboxd or isn't engaged in film Twitter, if they'll be like, what are you talking about? This is the craziest movie I've ever seen. And that is how some of the reviews are coming across. And maybe that's why when some critics say this is the most disturbing, shocking horror movie ever, I'm just kind of like, you've never seen The Exorcist? You've never seen The Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Like, what do you mean that this is more disturbing than those things?
To me, it really is as simple as when you were younger, did you watch Two Girls, One Cup? You know what I mean? It'd be like, and if you did, it'd be like, I think that we literally joked about the human centipede, and like we're a part of a culture that does kind of almost want to push the limit of what is the weirdest fucking movie that you like. And so we talked about a bunch of movies that me and you have come across that are considered disturbing, and it's something like the human centipede.
This isn't weirder than Tetsuo the Iron Man. The guy has a mechanical drill dick and fucks a girl with it. Like that's weirder.
Oh, we talked about Salo, right? And it's like that's one of them. It's like University of 120 Days of Saddam, like completely changed. That's where we got Gaspar Noé from, right? Like I it's not to be like, oh, we're comparing it to something that's a lot less mainstream, but I'm just saying, like, we're part of a culture that does kind of always want to watch the weirdest thing you probably haven't seen that is disgusting,
man.
Yeah. And so as somebody who's watched these things, and like you're talking about, maybe that's the issue here, as somebody who's one of their favorite movies is Possession, right? I'm like, this isn't that fucking weird. So I don't know, maybe it's not okay that we feel this way, but then at the same time, what I've tried to balance with this is that what is there I do enjoy. When it doesn't get really slow, when it's when those moments of small sci-fi or those really, really good cinematography shots are in here, I did think this film was ramping up to an ending that would make me really love this film.
Oh, yeah.
So when that didn't come, right, I felt like that's where I was like, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was blue-balled exactly, but there was many moments in this, I was like, I'm ready for this to be my favorite movie of the year.
Yeah.
You know, I know it's January. Nothing else matters after this. You know what I mean? But then there was other times where I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is so boring. Getting back to your point, I wanted to bring this up earlier when we were talking about Brandon Cronenberg and you said the maturity aspect, and that's not really something you can give him because he's only in his third film, and you know, somebody like his dad, when they want to sidestep expectations and make something like Crimes of the Future, you know, you can kind of see that and go, okay, I get it. You know, you wanted to misdirect, you know, you wanted to go off the beaten path and try something new. But for Brandon Cronenberg, I wouldn't say this is a step backwards. I would say this is more of lateral movement. It's not, you know, no gains here, no losses, just kind of, you know, okay, I still think you're a very interesting filmmaker with a unique vision, and I will watch your next movie tomorrow. This doesn't negate me at all from Brandon Cronenberg. The stock is still going up, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's I'm not ready to dump it or anything, but I just don't think that this was a step up. And for a director who's only had 3 movies, you know, not to evoke the god Jordan Peele, but you know, his step up from Get Out to Nope is astronomical. You know what I mean? Those are the most gains I've seen. You know, and with Brandon Cronenberg, I'm just kind of like, okay. Like, I don't know if it felt more like, for me, it felt like, just get this one out of your system so the next one can be very good. But I still do enjoy this movie quite a bit. For me, the script being so weak is not really a huge problem because this film is very, you know, hallucinogenic and violent and stylistic and, you know, all of those things, and that works for me. But I think the stuff that really works is like the black comedy satire aspect of it.
Yeah.
Which it is. I don't think that this movie is funny by accident. There is a lot of things in here that are very much like The Menu or The White Lotus or any of these other shows that are skewering the rich.
Triangle.
But what I thought, Triangle of Sadness. But what I thought was actually funny about this, while those other projects have tackled like the elite of the elite, this is a movie about people who are just like kind of wealthy. You know what I mean? Like an architect, a guy who wrote one book. Like these are people who are only rich because they're in a poor Eastern European country. They're not like actually the richest people. So I found that to be kind of funny. It's just like this small group of people who treat this country as their playground to kind of like basically they Westworld this place. You know what I mean? They go in and do whatever they want and get the fuck out. So I just thought it was kind of funny that it was about people who were like, they have $20,000 on their vacation or something like that. You know what I mean? But in Eastern Europe, that's like millions of dollars. I
guess that really is part of what makes the small dynamicism that we have with our main character is imposter syndrome. And I think maybe that's why at the end of the film, kind of those things that you're touching upon is that somebody who thinks they're this being put in a position to think that they might be acting like the super wealthy, look what kind of monster they create. And it makes you kind of realize that you're not part of this elite class and that this is just kind of a vacation. and really the farthest thing from your reality, giving up so much for something that is a temporary feeling. Those are the small things that I did feel like this film did conclude, but at the end of the day, not tackled enough, you know?
Yeah. That's the word enough is just how I feel about this whole movie. Like, I didn't feel like any of it was enough. I needed more and more of everything.
Which is interesting, 'cause that's why I wanted to bring it up, because the first viewing after Crimes of the Future, that's how you felt, you know?
Yeah, I'm like, more. I was mad that Crimes of the Future had ended where it did. I was like, no. I was like, this is only half the movie, right? There's like, gotta be, like, I thought it cut to black, and then I was like, okay, and then it's gonna be like, you know, part 2 or no. I was so disappointed when Crimes of the Future was over, and it wasn't because I didn't like it. It's because I was like, I'm ready for the other half of the movie.
And this one, it was just like, I kept expecting a third act twist or something that was gonna make me be like,
Not to be one of these guys, but I felt like I saw this movie coming once it started. I was like, I get it. Like, this is going to be a kind of a massive spoiler, but when he's forced to beat himself up, I literally was going to turn to you and be like, I bet you he's about to beat himself up. And usually when that can happen, I'm like, that must mean it's not very good if I can predict it, right? I don't ever do the, like, you know, I'm so sophisticated, I can predict how movies are going to end.
You just watched too many of them.
Yeah, I've watched enough to know, you know. But I kind of wanted to maybe I wanted to get off the first thoughts a little bit, but I would say my overall summary of it would be like, if I had to put this in soccer terms, that this was a draw for Brandon Cronenberg, but a massive win for the production crew and the cast.
Yeah.
I think that the cinematography, the music, the editing, and the acting is all fucking all fucking gas, no brakes, firing on all cylinders. I think that stuff is really, really good. It sounds weird to say, but maybe who knows if Brandon Cronenberg is actually the right person to direct this project. I know he wrote it, but who knows if he should have directed it. You know, I felt like maybe it was lacking direction a little bit. And you would think, since we're so into directors, that'd be a huge negative, but like I said, I'm still very neutral on the whole thing. I'm like, I could probably like this movie more if I watched it again, but then I can also see the sides of, nah, this is not good. Like, this is a film for me that actually is worthy of discourse, because if you told me this is the worst movie you've seen this year, I would think it's valid. But also, if you told me this is the best movie you've seen, this is a fucking masterpiece, I'm like, I could see that, you know? Like, I get you, but I don't know. It's boring to say that I'm falling in the middle.
Yeah, but it's not somewhere I usually fall. For a film that I think is more to my liking than it should than other films.
Yeah, well, the most interesting podcast. I'm neutral. Huh?
Yeah, sorry, guys.
Sorry. I did want to say that I thought this was a big L for Croatia and Hungary, though, right? As unlike the White Lotus, this does not make me want to stay in this far Eastern European country. I wrote down a blurb that this movie is doing what Jaws did for sharks in terms of bad PR for Croatia. I now fear this country.
Yeah.
Not going to Eastern Europe, man. I don't want to get cloned.
Like, that's why there's no crimes in these countries.
That's why.
That's a way to do it.
Alexander Skarsgård, Mia Goth, powerhouse performances. Come on, I knew that before this movie had even started.
I mean, I think there's something I want to bring up, because I don't know when the next time we'll bring it up. Maybe Maxine. I cannot believe Mia Goth's voice is what it is. Her real voice.
Yeah, I don't want to bully her too much, because it's not her choice, but she does sound like a Victorian ghost. That is true.
And in this movie, I feel like
Sprite really would kill her.
I feel like they really let it fly.
Yeah.
And
I couldn't believe they actually made that choice.
I just like she said she wants to be in a movie in Spanish, and I was like, I hope she talks the same way in Spanish, because that's just.
It'd be funny if she had a completely different tone. She just had like a really deep voice in Spanish. Oh man.
I will say, going back a little bit to the movie, he also wrote Possessor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
he's an auteur. Huh.
So it does feel like either he should have had someone co-write this with him or not directed it, like you said. Either one of those two decisions. Again, just so close, but I ended up falling.
Is it wrong to want greatness? You know, like, come on, man. I just wanted this to be one of my favorite movies of the year. Who knows? This seems like an exciting year, so I feel confident saying now that there will be 10 to 20 other movies that I like a shit ton more than this. But looking ahead to 2024, I guess I could see this being an honorable mention.
This is what we ended up kind of realizing after that same theater experience and watching a bunch of trailers. I hadn't been to the theater in almost a month since we last watched The Whale. So
Unfortunately, that's the last movie I've seen
yeah,
at the theater.
like, yeah, there wasn't anything else that I wanted to see apparently. But I will say, getting back to this episode, do you think we should introduce the synopsis to this film?
I mean, if you have it, go ahead. I was gonna do it through the characters themselves, but if you have it, go ahead.
Okay. It says, while staying at an isolated island resort, James and Em are enjoying a perfect vacation of pristine beaches, exceptional staff, and soaking up the sun. But guided by the seductive and mysterious Gabby, they venture outside the resort grounds and find themselves in a culture filled with violence, hedonism, and untold horror.
Synopsises are so boring. Like the way that they write them in the most plain way that would never make you want to actually see the movie. But so we could start with the characters, I feel like, and then if we really want to spoil it from there, I would say we're far enough into the pod that if you want to go see this movie, go ahead and do that. I do think it is worth watching.
Yep.
It wouldn't be an episode if it wasn't, but beware of any spoilers from this point out. But I can't say for sure if we're going to spoil it or not. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Let's start with our main man, Alexander Skarsgård, as James Foster. How do you feel about his performance before I kind of get into who he is and what he's doing?
I feel like Alexander Skarsgård did here as well as the role asked of him, which I don't think is his fault. But he was one of the characters I wanted more from, but I don't think that's his fault.
I really like his performance. I think he's on a hot streak with The Northman, Succession, this, and season 4 of Succession. So I do think he's one of the more interesting actors working. I had seen a joke on Twitter that I thought was relevant to this episode, which is like the Skarsgårds are not Nepo babies. They're Nepo men. They earned their dollar.
Yeah, that's true.
I thought that was so funny. And if you've seen Alexander Skarsgård out here on this promotional tour being Mia Goth's dog, I could, yes, I'm very into this. I like the idea of him being so down for these weirdo, bold choices like The Northman and this movie. So I can't wait to see what he keeps doing. But he plays James Foster. So Foster is a struggling writer.
The second movie, he's a dog in a row, huh?
Yeah, he was a bear wolf in the first one, and he was the gimp in this one. Foster's a struggling writer who's written only one book and is on vacation in Croatia with his. I think right. Is it a fictional version of Croatia? It's Soviet-esque. Very comrade. He's in Croatia. We'll just say Croatia, right? Because that's where it was filmed. With his wife and trying to find some inspiration. His wife is very rich and is the daughter of a publishing mogul who published James's novel. It is alluded to that James's novel would have not been worthy of publication had his father-in-law not been such a powerful figure. And I couldn't help but notice this is the second film now where one of our main male characters are in relationships with women who have powerful fathers. Mm-hmm. So like in Possession, that is a main component of the film. It's kind of the driving force, actually. What does this say about Brandon Cronenberg? I wonder if he has a powerful father-in-law. Because Sean Bean played the other one, and if you saw Possessor or watched or listened to the episode, you would know that it didn't go well for him.
Nope.
And we don't ever see this father-in-law, but I just find that interesting now that 2 movies in a row, and that's kind of a thing that is needed to be said in the script.
I think it always for him.
Is it emasculating?
That's what I was gonna say. Is I think that in the world that he always creates with the characters who might be more misogynistic, more in trying to be in terms of the male, what we think is a male figure,
male ego.
Yeah, I think one of the most breaking things is to think that you're a boss, but you're not the boss even of your household. And whether that's a sentiment I agree with or not, that's up for discussion, obviously. But it always seems like it's the most ego-breaking thing for a man. And he always kind of uses that as a point as to how extreme can that push you. I mean, that is not an invalid point. I think that is a point that a lot of the tragedies that happen, even in this country, with the guns and stuff like that, do come from that sentiment. So I think it's kind of used as an extreme proponent to really push for societies that would allow for something like this, honestly.
You know, in Possessor, because I like the film so much more, it's not something that bothers me. But I guess maybe in this film, because he's such like a pathetic man and has such a like fragile male ego and all of that, I see myself as a confident male, so I don't see why having a powerful father-in-law would make me feel like less than. But I don't know, maybe that's something Brandon Cronenberg feels. Not to put anything on him in a political way like that, but
Right, yeah.
you know, what does it say about you that apparently you hate father-in-laws or something like that? I don't know. Maybe that's a take that I'm not you know, really the right person to be analyzing, but I just thought it was interesting. So the character of James, though, I think he's very pathetic, weak, easily pushed around man who, as the story progresses, you know, he's here to, the point of the movie is to unlock his inner beast, or, you know, the trailer, Mia Goth has the line like, what kind of creature are you? And that's really what the driving force of the movie is. And I guess by the end of this, when I see what kind of creature he is, I'm just like, not that interesting.
Yeah.
But I do like Alexander Skarsgård's performance, and I think he has a lot of moments where he really does get to do that primal thing that he did in The Northman. But I just, like I said, more. That's just all I can say about this movie. Kind of in every facet, is I wanted more of everything, and I didn't really think that Alexander Skarsgård got to go full tilt the same way that he did in The Northman. And I understand that actors don't always give the exact same performance, so I'm not trying to say that either. I just expected a little more.
I just think, for example, there was a film that you brought up right after that I just is glaring in my head about, like, is not nearly as a premise as trippy, but somehow draws, again, the same things that this movie wanted me to feel, is Climax.
Yeah, like, I think Gaspar Noé is a much more disturbing, vile director than
Yeah,
Brandon Cronenberg.
and I think it's like, if you wanted somebody to evoke that twistedness through not just because I think the setup in the story here, the society that is made through this premise, is good. That's where the writing, building the world and making me feel like this is normal. I think that is what the film's approach, Saint to Possessor, is wanting to do.
He's very good at building the world and making it feel realist.
Yeah, with the minimal amount, like you said, this movie even uses less sci-fi than the other one. So
it's a sci-fi pastiche.
Yeah,
isn't exactly the whole thing, you know.
So I just ended up feeling like it's the actual components of what's going on in here that, like, okay, you've set me up to think that they want to have these certain laws because they're going to be allowed to do this crazy stuff. And funny enough, this film is like everything that you'd think is sick and twisted. It has. There's a cum scene, right? But then I always end up thinking, like, okay, there's one in The Green Knight too. You know what I mean? Exactly. So that it's like this is a very timid. For me, The Green Knight is a very opposite movie of this, and I think they're very similar type of shots like that. So then, for me to really feel like a movie who really has the leeway to go all the way into this darkness is only taking it as far as a movie who's trying to keep it clean.
It's kind of insane when they're like, isn't this movie so twisted? It had a shot of jizz. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. And then the other one is like, and it has sex. And it's like, again, climax and all of the, like, I've seen seen orgies, you know, like in other films before.
I like how you whisper this word.
You know, in other films before. That's not very crazy either.
I honestly think when things are portrayed in a very, they're just shot in a very, not bland way, but, you know, it's just there, you know, like I saw, and how dare you, not you, but, you know, how dare they ever compare this to Eyes Wide Shut, right? And I think the reason that a film like Eyes Wide Shut is much more disturbing is because, like, the orgy's just going on in the background, and you know, it's shot in the way it would be if, like, it was just two people playing chess. And it's like, that's what's disturbing, is the fact that you're acting like it's not disturbing. And this movie is like, aren't I so sick and twisted?
You know what is the simple touch in Eyes Wide Shut that I think is why it makes it so disturbing? The use of mask, which I think this film completely only uses for an aesthetic choice, but the use of the mask dehumanizes the person, and it makes up feeling like sex is very animalistic because there's no emotion portrayed through the mask. So it ends
Yeah, to
up
see
feeling.
those blank faces while like the most carnal sex I've ever seen is going on, versus this where it's just kind of like I thought it was gonna be much more than just an aesthetic choice. It's cool when people wear masks,
And
right?
then-
you're like, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. At the end of the last thing that this film has really shown, like, and has blood. Again, to not compare it to anything else but itself.
But I'm about to compare it to something else.
But in itself is the scene in Possessor where he does stab his father-in-law and he keeps stabbing him in the face, or just sticks it through his eye, is way more disgusting than anything I saw in this film. And I think that's like, I don't understand why when you're given such leeway to, and I'm not trying to, that's where we kind of think about, like, I don't know, I guess I thought you were more sick and twisted than me, and I just thought you were going to take it somewhere else after you kind of already, when I watched, I think we watched that scene when we were doing the episode, and even when I was watching it was on mute, and I was like, oh, I was shaking my head, even though I wasn't paying attention to the movie.
I also think that scene was shot in a way where it's just presented to you in a cold way.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these visual effects and editing techniques sometimes do take it away, because it's like, you know, the sci-fi is blaring, the synth is blaring, and the colors are changing, and the guy's bleeding out on the ground, and you're just kind of like, okay, like I get you, yeah, this is pretty, this is cool. Be like, but when it's presented in that cold way of just like, just look at this man on the ground with his eyeball popped out, that is more disturbing.
And it doesn't help either that the person who's doing this, there's a point in this movie where it does get very brutal, very animalistic, just punching of someone's face. It's one of the bloodiest scenes, is done by somebody who I just saw be the Northman. Mm-hmm. And kind of actually really show off that brute force. And then you've kind of established a character here that I already feel like is being a cuck.
Beta. But okay, so getting back to the characters, I did want to shout out Mia Goth, obviously. So Mia Goth, she plays Gabby Bauer, and she's a woman on vacation with her husband who frequents, I don't know if it's an island in Croatia or whatever this is, but it's called Latoka, and she's an alleged fan of James's first novel. She acts as sort of their guide, you know, spiritually and physically to this demented world, right? She introduces them to the dark underbelly of Latoka. Which sounds like a place in Zelda, honestly, the more I say it. And it's evident from the beginning that she plans on fucking up James's life, but I don't even think anybody could conceive the shit she's about to put him through, you know? It's classic, the relationship between them, you know. He's ready to throw it all away before he even... It's kind of like The Shining, where you're like, this guy was going to kill his family anyways. This vacation just made it worse.
Yeah.
I kind of felt the same way with Infinity Pool. Like, this guy was ready to throw his life away or completely change everything, right? She was just kind of the key to unlocking that door. I would say, to Gabby's credit, James had a paper-thin defense. You know what I mean? Like, there was no wall here. He was ready to give in the second he saw her. And as a regular of Latoka... Gabby and her husband have formed a small group of wealthy but not too rich vacationers who treat the country as a playground for their darkest fantasies, as there's not really any consequences if you're willing to throw your soul out the window.
He's so unhappy for being so set up, right? He's so unhappy for being so set up. He's like, this fucking sucks. My wife doesn't let me do anything.
It's very Skylar and Walt in Breaking Bad. She's like, stop selling meth. And he's like, yeah, you never let me do anything. God, my wife is like, she doesn't let me do anything.
See, they get it.
Yeah. And, you know, speaking of the wife, I did want to bring this up because this is honestly the weakest part of the movie. I think Cleopatra Coleman was done completely dirty by Brandon Cronenberg here. She's a absolute nothing character, honestly. As mentioned, she is the wife of James and the daughter of a powerful publishing mogul, and that's really it. Honestly, this movie does not pass the Bechdel test or whatever that thing's called. So I can't even say if she gave a good or bad performance, honestly, but I'm not dissuaded by her, you know, like I wouldn't not watch a movie because she's in it.
She's going to be in Rebel Moon, so.
Oh, okay. So we know. Oh, great. She's going to be in a Zack Snyder movie. We're definitely covering that.
I will say, no, but I will say.
Don't worry, guys. I'll find a way to make that an honorable mention and talk about it one day.
I agree with you in this. The only thing I came out of the theater with her walking, who's that?
Yeah. She's hot.
Yeah, exactly.
Her only real purpose in the film is to be a barrier between James's boring real life, quote unquote, which is being a rich, do nothing, lazy ass who gets to suck off of his wife's fucking savings. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, wow, what a guy. Oh, I hate this boring life of mine, right? Oh man, some people really have it all, huh? She's nothing more than a plot device meant to show some sort of conflict, but I think she's given the short end of the stick. It's almost like Cronenberg was really like, so he has a wife and she's normal and he's not. You know what I mean? And honestly, her character, I guess, tries to snap some sense into him, but her real efforts are mild and completely futile. Her dialogue is wooden, and it's things like, "This is disgusting," and that's it.
Let's
Like,
go
you know,
back home.
Yeah, you know, like that's it. Really, she's like, "I can't believe you," and he's like, "Believe it."
Yeah.
It's
Yikes.
really, that's all. I understand that the marriage was meant to be conveyed in a way where there was like no spark or romance, and I do think that she views James as beneath her, which is part of the, you know, the emasculating that he goes, the emasculization that he goes through. I don't even know if that's a word, that he goes through, and but it's not deep at all. She really just says things like, "Oh, he married rich. That's how he can be a writer," and like, and that destroyed his whole life or what? You know, like I really don't see the push from her as to why he would be so unhappy.
Wait,
with his life.
What does this suck so much? What's
so bad about
what is
his
the life that if he didn't marry her like? What was he supposed to do, right?
You work at Starbucks?
Yeah.
My man is a bozo. Yeah. And I mean, and the chances that she does, the efforts she does make are so mild that Alexander Skarsgård is literally just like, "Kay, didn't ask, run back to your daddy."
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and that's what she does. Like, so I don't know how much she was willing to really save this marriage either, honestly. So there are 3 main characters, and I would say it's a mixed bag. Overall, I do think that Mia Goth gives the best performance of the movie. Alexander Skarsgård, I did want more, and with Cleopatra Coleman, I'm just like, you got done dirty. I don't know. Hopefully, he puts you in another movie and you get a much better role than this. But you were there.
Yeah.
She gets at least a B+ for showing up, I guess. Right.
That sucks.
So, is there any kind of moments or scenes in the movie that you'd kind of like to talk about now that we've opened up the, you know, that we might give some spoilers?
I will say that there's a lot of the scenes of the cinematography is one of my favorite aspects of this film. There's a lot of shots of the beach or just their setting that they're in that I felt very similar to the Banshees of Inisherin. They kind of just show off the glorious landscape. And then also,
oh, Croatia, yay!
Yeah, you had made a point. So there's certain films, especially or certain shots, especially towards the end, where they kind of look like heat.
Dude,
For
yeah, some of the
why,
shots
right?
of Alexander Skarsgård when he's like wearing like his like suit and not suit and tie, but he's wearing like a dress shirt and slacks,
Glasses,
his
right?
hair slicked back, real piece of shit looking.
Yeah.
You know, you're just like, oh yes. Why does he look like he just walked off the set of Heat?
Real failed author, like.
Yeah, the more I'm thinking about it, I'm just kind of like, not that this really matters, because, you know, I've given much more unrealistic characters the benefit of the doubt. That I'm like, no, but you don't get it. This is why he did that. But I'm really at a loss for words here. And maybe it's because I'm not this type of male that I'm just kind of like, wow, you threw away the easiest life you've ever had that anyone could ask for, right? Like, you get to write your shitty little book that no one cares about and your wife takes care of you. My man was living like a king and threw it all away. For me, basically everything you see in the trailer, I'm like, yeah, very good. Like all of that stuff as it's played out in the long sequences that they actually are very good. And I do love the comedy aspects of this movie. I do think that that's what works the best. You know, there's a scene where you just see this really violent break-in and murder, and then it cuts to these people waiting in the lobby of the prison, kind of like, I've been waiting for an hour, like, let's get this over with, like that shit's really funny to me, and I kind of wish it was more of that. But I did feel that the film, like, the longer it went on, it just kind of, all of it just kind of petered out, and it wasn't really about any of the things that I don't know. I felt like it didn't really pick a lane of what it wanted to judge too much. Because by the end of this movie, and this is a spoiler, you know, they've basically ruined James's life, and now they're like, well, vacation's over, time to go back
time
to
to go
work.
home. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're all gonna have they can kind of control this beast within them, and you know, they go on vacation, and what happens in Latoka stays in Latoka, but they ruin James's life. I don't know. Do they ruin his life? I mean, from an audience perspective, yes. But from his perspective, my man is like, oh, this has just begun.
Yeah, now I know what I like.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the film kind of takes the same direction as his other characters in the movie. By the time it gets to the end, it's ready to leave James on the island and move forward with it. It seems like James just kind of stuck in a time. I don't know if he necessarily lost much, like you said. It just seems like he comes to a realization that he would have came to at any certain point.
Did he need Latoka to have this, or would it have happened anyway?
Can this bum just live there because he doesn't really do anything anyways, right?
It doesn't really matter where I live. I'm a loser either way.
Because he just keeps he keeps extending his stay because it's under the name of somebody else. So he's like, yeah, I'll stay another week.
Somebody else's dime, right?
So I don't understand. The other scene is like everybody else in the resort just left also at the same time because he's the only person.
It's the winter season now, so the monsoons are coming in. So what do they call him? The concierge. She tells him like, you can only book for one more week because we're going to be closed anyways. So
okay.
I don't know if this is implying that he just is living there in the off season by himself. Does he become the Shining?
Yeah. No, I will say that it does make me see, but then there arises more questions. Like he is just going to go back to where though? Like, I guess.
And I guess he's just going to chill in Latoka.
He ended up finding out he has mommy issues. And that's it, right?
Who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like this is also spoiler as well. I would say spoilers from this point on. Like I'm not really gonna hold back. There's moments I want to mention when he's when he is finally accepted by this group of I don't even know what to call them of heathens, right?
Yeah.
After he metaphorically and literally kills himself, you know, and he's finally accepted into the group as an alpha. Mia Goth presents her boob and he drinks from it. I don't even know what that's trying to say. I guess mommy issues, right? But I'm like, this is so sick and twisted. I don't know. Have you read The Grapes of Wrath or seen the movie? Like, this happened in 1930, whatever. Like, this isn't shocking or creepy to me at all. So I just thought that was kind of funny that I don't know why this film just felt so tame and kind of nothing to me, honestly, even though I do like it a lot, which I don't know. I don't think I'd give this film. I'm giving this film the benefit of the doubt that I wouldn't give most films. And that's just a personal bias. I'm willing to admit that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's because of what you said. The setup for it is so much everything of what I wanted. And at one point during watching these films, without the moments of the lows, I did end up thinking this was going to turn the same way in Possessor, where there were some moments when I was watching it where I was like, okay, where is this going to go? But then at the end, I did really feel like, oh, this was more than just visual style. And I ended up feeling like this was carried more through its visual style.
Going back to a point you had brought up earlier, I kind of wanted to save it till this point because now that we're in the spoiler zone, I thought it would be okay. But you had asked me if I thought that he actually was the original James, or if, you know, from the first execution of his first execution, like what if that was a clone? Like how would he even know, right? Because the whole point is that they have the memories and emotions along with being a perfect copy, so that when the clone is executed, it feels the guilt and pain of the person who committed the crime, right? I didn't see that as something that was even needing to be discussed. I thought it was very obvious from the beginning. And I do think that the ending solidifies that more when he beats himself up and kills the other version of himself that they've created, the dog version of himself. But yeah, like I don't know if I would have necessarily liked it more if it was like an identity crisis story. You know, like, oh, is he the clone? Is he not the clone? But I do guess I find it unsatisfying in retrospect because I'm like, well, there wasn't really much else here that made me feel like, oh, this was a storyline that was worth dumping for something greater.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I it's not like I'm trying to say like, okay, this is how I would rewrite the movie, but I kind of wish it would have leaned into something a little more than, I don't know, just kind of. It felt like a tentacled beast. You know what I mean? Like there was 8 arms balancing 8 different things going on, and none of them really made me feel like satisfied or that the ending was really resolved.
Exactly. I mean, I don't see. I have so many questions as to the fact that obviously it's like the rich like making fun of people who aren't as rich as them.
I don't have a lot of questions in this movie, but
like,
I just wanted to say
like the rich like teasing on other people who are not as rich as them, or making them feel like they might be part of the elite, and that's where the game and the satisfaction in being a vacation.
I took that like college hazing kind of.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, you're one of us now, but
yeah.
you have to go through this really embarrassing shit first.
And then for them to,
they like him by the end.
But
that's
then
what
I was
makes
gonna
it
say,
kind of weird. Is like they put him through all of this. They literally shoot him, and then they're like, you know, that was fun stuff. Good times.
Yeah.
See you next year.
Because it's a kind of, again, commenting on what Triangle of Sadness, the menu, all of these kind of the unhumane sentiments that the rich have. But it's the fact that if it wasn't James, it could have been anybody else. And it's probably been anybody else. And James just another story to them. But why has it affected him so much? Maybe it's because it's like first time he's getting exposed to these things. But I ended up feeling like you said, if he's so accepted into this society, you would think that he would want to continue to partake in society. But he seems more to be traumatized by what happened to him or his realizations. And I end up kind of just feeling like everybody else there seems to accept that they're kind of a shitty person. He seems to be the only one that's having that dilemma, and it doesn't seem to really be a dilemma because everybody else seems to be fine with it.
Well, it feels like a dilemma, but also, and I think this is a problem with the writing, is that we don't see this internal battle really of like, this is wrong that I'm doing this, you know, like it really is as simple as he beats up what he thinks is a cop, that the cop who arrested him in the first place, you know, the one who set the whole thing in motion. He thinks he's beating him up, so you know he's having his good time. He's doing his Northman shtick where he's like, you know, and but then he takes off the hood and he realizes he's beating himself up, and I feel like it's just as deep as like, oh my god, and then
it's me,
and then he's like, well, I don't know, I guess I don't care that much that it's me. That's just how I took it. Like it was almost like he had post-nut clarity, but then like kept doing what he was doing anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, I feel bad. Oh well.
Exactly, because it's like he looked at himself. He's like, wait, somebody like that could be me. That's just another me with the same emotions. That's how I could turn out. That's crazy. Anyways,
He didn't ask.
yeah. Like, okay, I mean that's true, but I don't know. I just ended up always feeling, if I feel that way about the resolution after a film, it does make me feel like it didn't do its job very well.
Yeah, which is like I would say that this movie is not exactly the easiest movie to tackle, you know what I mean? So it's a bold creative swing, so I do appreciate that aspect of it. One of the funnier parts to me was the illusion that not the illusion, but the facade that this trip was for inspiration. And that I kind of did think like, oh, maybe he's getting involved in this world because he's gonna write like a cool book.
That's what I thought too.
Use it, but then after about 15 minutes, you're like, why is he a writer? Like it literally doesn't matter. He's not gonna use this for anything. Like he's not. I guess it's because he's not actually a writer, and this is who he really is like, you know, not a normal person, quote unquote. Somebody, somebody on the outside of society, kind of taking place in like the underbelly of society. But for me, that was kind of pointless as well. I'm just like, he could have had any job. It actually didn't matter at all. And I don't know if that's nitpicky or not, but I just noticed like after he started taking place with all of this, that just kind of like that doesn't matter. I don't know. A lot of the movie just kind of felt like, that didn't matter. Like it was all just in service of getting to the cool visual, dreamy, hallucinogenic, violent aspects of the movie.
I just can't really fall into this whole thing that how weird can it be when they don't really seem to think it's that weird that you can buy a clone. With all these ifs, ands, or buts.
It's played so straight that it's not even ever. He's not even like, what? There's a clone? He's just like, I don't understand. And they're like, get in the box.
Shut
Shut up, get in the box. You're like, yeah. And as for that aspect, I do enjoy those. You know, I too am a fan of when editor uses all the tools at their disposal.
Yes,
you know?
sir.
So that's cool. But I also don't think that I don't think this film pushed any boundaries in any way. It's just another piece in the collection of things I like. I'll never remember it for how it changed me or how it changed how I view certain movies or anything like that. It's just a good time at the movies, honestly.
It is a movie that I will recommend to somebody. There's certain films that we watched that I don't think a general audience member or a general person who doesn't go to the theaters all the time would want to watch, unless it's a subject that they specifically are like, I've never seen a movie done about this. Like, well, actually, let me tell you about. But this is a movie that I'd be like, you want to watch something out there that I would recommend to them, you know?
I would recommend this movie to a person who likes movies.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, you want to see something fucked up? I would not recommend this to like a coworker or
Right, exactly.
you know, you're having dinner with family and your uncle's like, what have you watched lately? I'd be like, Infinity Pool.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? But it's funny because like small obscure indie films, even though it's Oscar nominated, shout out, you know, like the Banshees of Inisherin, right? Like that movie, I'm like, I'll tell anybody to watch that movie, you know? Or even like Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, you know? Like I'd be like, oh, you need to see this actually. Or you know, check it out. I would feel like I might be judged if I told somebody to watch this. They're like, what the fuck did you tell me to watch, right?
Yeah.
But for a sicko like me, I'd be like, that's just a Thursday night.
That's fucking tame, brother.
Yeah. Pretty mild. But that kind of takes me to the end of this, right? I mean, I feel like I don't have too much more to say.
No.
Overall, though, although this may have sounded negative, I still feel like this was a positive experience.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it is more fun, actually, to kind of not like the movie as much as you think you would.
I will say that my closing thought for this is there's a mention here of an infinity pool just for the sake of the title, I think. And I think that really encapsulates how I feel about the whole movie and what the direction of the whole movie is. Is there any tie-in as to, you know, how this infinity pool thing was resolved? No, there's not. And I think it's just because it's cool. To
that point, so I guess we'll just... I guess I'll spoil this part, right? Mia Goth and her husband, the reason that they even got involved in this type of I don't know, deviancy or whatever, right?
How they found out that there's this rule that even really exists in this place,
because which we haven't even got to a fucking hour into the movie, right? So
okay, so it does say it in the trailer, so you're kind of like, that's
okay. If you commit a crime in this country, if you're rich enough, you can pay for them to create a perfect double, and you know they'll be executed
out of a bubblegum machine.
Yeah, out of a bubblegum machine. Out of some Willy Wonka Rube Goldberg machine. But I would say that's the aforementioned the titular infinity pool, right? Because you can make the clone, you could live forever, hence the infinity pool, right? But Mia Goth and her husband, this man is an architect who literally built an infinity pool that fell and crushed two people. And that's how they've realized that this was a thing.
That was the crime they did here.
Boring. But yeah, so I guess kind of getting off of that, I did feel though like this movie really was you can accuse this movie of being all style, no substance, and that it was made because this was a cool idea, and they're like, don't worry, we'll figure out all the other shit later.
And I'm okay with that.
I'm okay. Yeah, that works for me.
I'm just saying, as somebody, as we have to hop on here and be as unbiased as we possibly can try to be.
Allegedly.
Yeah. We couldn't help but not lie about here, and I wouldn't have been able to sit here and tell you how much I loved this movie even if I tried. Like where I was like, this
as much as I want to.
Yeah. As much as I wanted to, I had to sit here and say that there was parts where I thought it was boring. So just an honest review.
So that'll take us to, I wanted to do something that we don't normally do, which is kind of some quick hits, just like other movies we saw this week or things that we thought that were worth mentioning, because we don't really do lobby talks all that often, as much as we would like, but I do think it is fun to at least mention other movies. So is there anything you wanted to shout out that you also saw this week?
Yeah, I think it's always...
Movies that you would feel comfortable telling people to see?
It's always a fun little thing to do because we have... me and you do watch a lot of other movies besides the one movie we talk about, sometimes two during the week. Entails movies from the past. I would say for two reasons I will bring up. I have three movies to bring up. One is Free Guy, which okay. So you had asked me this a couple months ago, maybe even a year ago, maybe throughout our whole friendship, if there's ever been a movie that was so bad that it offended you.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I had ever felt that way about a movie up until I saw Free Guy.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I ended up finally feeling that this is something that I had seen people really try to tell me they thoroughly enjoyed, and I don't think I've ever seen a cog of a machine just like this is what's wrong with movies, like this is the and since we're doing quick hits, this is where I'm just gonna shit on this movie. But Free Guy is one of the worst movies I've seen in my life, and I think I can't believe there was so much money put into this. I can't believe the dialogue in this is real. I cannot believe this is something that somebody might think like finds humorous. Everything is wrong with this movie.
Do you think that this tanked Taika Waititi's stock? Like, this is why people hate him.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. No, because I'm just like, at what point, as somebody who is, I do like some of his movies before he was in the Marvel, like the Wildebeest.
Hunt for the Wilder People.
Yeah, like I love that movie. So somebody who's kind of proven.
And you like Jojo Rabbit more than I do. I don't find that movie offensive, but I'm also like, why would you do this?
Yeah, but and it's like I enjoyed Jojo Rabbit, but
jeez, what kind of sick and twisted individual I am.
I think it's like Free Guy, everything revolving around it is kind of what people don't like about him anymore, and the fact that he would kind of even be there is, I think, why people are ready or already hopped off the bus a long time ago.
He needs to pull a Ryan Reynolds and buy a soccer team for me to be back in his good graces.
Yeah, but like all of a sudden I do like Ryan Reynolds. Like, I don't care about Ryan Reynolds, the actor, but like he owns Wrexham. Like that's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll let you go after.
So I rewatched Tar yesterday. Great. Love it. Even better the second time. But one I did want to bring up was that I watched an animated film, Lupin the Third, the First. Very confusing title. But just a cool animated movie. I had mentioned to you that Lupin is a character that I do think that you would enjoy. Gentleman thief, treasure, escapades, Nazis, all of those kinds of things. This movie was actually very Indiana Jones inspired, so I do think that you would enjoy this. I saw it on Hulu, so if you're looking for some more animation to watch, I would say check that one out.
Yeah, I mean, you were making the tie into Persona 5. Arsene's character is based off of Lupin.
Yeah, the Persona Arsene is based off of Arsene Lupin.
Lupin, yeah, and
this is a fictional character from books in like the 1800s. I'm pretty sure, like super duper old.
This is stuff that kind of in touching with the episode is I wish there was the subject matter was being made into movies.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So of course, for some reason, I think you've only brought him up to me a couple times. I think Persona 5 was the whole Arsene Lupin
tie-in.
Yeah, the whole tie-in that was. I think you brought him up before, but the fact that this is the only type of a quote unquote, for lack of a better word, content that I can receive that in without actually reading the 1800 clips, which are probably not very reading from it from 2023. I'm sure they're very not too indulging in my type of imagination now. I'm sure they're very basic.
Yeah. So
it's having to see something in animation like that is like, yeah, that's definitely catching my attention.
The other version I'd seen of it, if you want to watch the really good version of Lupin, is I believe it's Hayao Miyazaki's first film, because it's pre-Studio Ghibli, but it's Castle of Cagliostro, and that's a Lupin movie, and that's very, very good.
Okay.
So I would check that one out as well. Another one for me is I saw Sick, which I'm not sure if that's a 2022 or 2023 movie, but I think it's 2023, although Letterboxd says it's not. But that would technically be the first movie I saw of 2023, and Kevin Williamson Try Not to Remake Scream Challenge failed, but also that's a concept I do like. So I thought that Sick was an enjoyable movie. I thought that the cinematography and the action set pieces were like really fucking good, like way better than most slashers. So I do think that that's worth checking out if you have Peacock. I did think it was an interesting take on the COVID pandemic, and kind of I found it to be actually realistic that this would happen. Or like, I won't spoil it at all, but once you watch it, I do think that you're like, yeah, I could totally see that happening. So, not every slasher is realistic. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but I did think that I'm like, oh, I bet you this actually has happened. Or I could see this happening.
I'm interested in
I
watching
did
it.
enjoy Sick. Not very good movie, but I did enjoy it.
Okay.
Yeah. So what about you? Do you got anything else?
I got two more. Two more. I watched McCabe and Mrs. Miller. I've been raving about this movie for like a week.
This is like the third time I've heard you mention it this week.
Yeah. So Altman completely, not anything. It's a blank spot for me. I don't have any reason to have ever seen these movies. No exposure to them whatsoever. I obviously have heard so much about him.
Paul Thomas Anderson's favorite director of all time.
And so McCabe and Mrs. Miller really just caught my attention because I saw Warren Beatty's really cool pimp jacket. And I was like, this looks like it's really good. And it was just phenomenally shot. I think anytime I see a film from that era, someone or to believe that movies like this were being made and people went to go see them, and
this was wildly popular.
Yeah, and I think it just really, the subject matter that's tackled here isn't something that now, if it was, it'd be an indie film, and
Sean Baker would make this movie.
Yeah, and it's just the fact that it's not treated that way, and it's more given a more of a solid direction, and the way it's just shot, I think it's just amazing. It's one of my favorite films I think I've seen off just the first time that I've seen it. I found it hilarious, and I've noticed a lot of films that I end up really liking are multi-dimensional like that. They'll have their scenes where they're very emotional, and then I just end up thinking cinematography is really good, and then also very comedic. So that is a movie that I think you would really like yourself.
I almost bought the Criterion when the Criterion was having a sale a couple of weeks ago, and I picked up 3 of them, and that was one I almost grabbed.
Yeah, I obviously have been always really wanting to dive into his work. And maybe it was from just like you talked about Paul Thomas Anderson, but I think Robert Altman's name is thrown in a lot. I think we talked about sometimes it's really hard to think who are those very American directors, and he's one of them that I've always come across.
He's an extremely American director. I've seen 3 of his movies, I know I've seen 2 for sure, but I'm pretty sure this is the 3rd. I've seen Married to the Mob, and I've seen what's the other one? I just had it on the tip of my tongue. Network. He made Network. Did he make Network? I don't want to get roasted. Good thing no one's listening this far into the episode. But yeah, I have seen. Let me see. I wanted to make sure I got this right. But McCabe and Mrs. Miller is a movie that I've always wanted to see, and I never have. And I've always heard that it is one of those just like seminal American films. You know what I mean? Especially because I think it's the 70s, right?
Yeah, it's 71.
Yeah, like I've heard that it's one of these very important 70s movies.
I will say that this also gives me a little spot to highlight.
Not Network, so sorry. I don't know how many of his movies I've actually seen. Go ahead.
So,
that's Sidney Lumet. That's where I got that wrong. Go ahead.
But I was gonna say that like Criterion existing and being able to maybe save the original scans of this film and kind of restore it and give it its more attention. I don't know when this entered the Criterion collection is the reason why I appreciate them so much. I think it's the only reason I found out about it. And I just kind of wanted to highlight that I'm really glad to have seen that movie, and I would highly recommend it to anybody.
The other movie of his that I have seen is the Popeye with Robin Williams.
Oh, wow. I didn't know. That's funny.
Yeah, so talk about being one of those seminal American filmmakers. Oh, you know what? I was wrong again. Married to the Mob is not fucking Robert Altman. It's Jonathan Demme.
Oh,
but you know what? Perfect segue here. That brings me to my next film, which is Stop Making Sense, the Talking Heads film. That's directed by Jonathan Demme. Very enjoyable. We're pretty big Talking Heads fans. Talk about liking weirdos, right?
Yeah,
David Byrne
exactly.
is one of the great weirdos that's ever existed.
Big pants.
And yeah, big pants, big suit. Big suit. I wanted my head to look smaller. Just a great piece of cinema. Especially because it's two things that we enjoy very much. I know it sounds basic to be like, I like music and movies, but the marriage of the two. I do think that David Byrne created this concert in a very cinematic way, and I think Jonathan Demme helped carry that vision just to make a fantastic film. I was reading some stuff on it, and Jonathan Demme had mentioned that he's like, my only job was to just put the camera where he told me that David Byrne, this is just like his creation from his mind, and that he had the whole thing in his head about how it was going to look. He just needed somebody to do it, and Jonathan Demme was the guy. And talk about having an interesting filmography, right?
Yeah.
He's done Silence of the Lambs and a Talking Heads film, and maybe he's a director we'll get to talk about more this year. But that was another one for me. Check out the 4K remaster of it. It's on YouTube, and it's only an hour and 28 minutes. And if you're not a Talking Heads fan, I think you will be by the end, because they're one of the more interesting bands of all time, and they really are some. They're normcore, like Nathan Fielder, like weirdos, you know.
Yeah.
So if you want weirdos who are not trying so hard, like Brandon Cronenberg. I do think that you might enjoy the Talking Heads film. So check that out. For me, I would say I think that wraps it up, because I haven't actually seen. I've seen a lot of movies so far this year. I am at that point where I've seen more than one a day. So like, hopefully by the end of this year, I will have hit 365. But I've been watching a lot of old stuff. I've yet to really dive into the 2023 offerings. I'd like to see Plane.
Yeah,
That's what I'd like to see.
True
I
that.
really doubt we'll do an episode on something like that, but I like movies. So Plane, that's one I want to see. I do think it's interesting that Gerard Butler's having that turn back into popularity.
Yeah.
By just continuing to make the same shitty movies that he makes, right? He's kind of having like the Minions effect, where it was like, I hate this. Wait, I like this. So Plane is one I definitely want to check out. But for me, that kind of wraps it up. I don't know if you have any other movies that you want to mention.
I just had one more, just because I'm not sure the trajectory of this movie. Maybe it'll get this episode, maybe it won't. But I saw Close yesterday.
Gay?
I saw Close yesterday, Lucas Dant movie. I believe this is Belgic. Yeah, I believe this is from Belgium. 2022 film, technically. A24 distribution. It's in the international best for international, which is, I'm sure we'll end up talking about that in another later episode, the Oscars and those nominations. But yeah, Close. Very heartfelt, very subject matter that maybe might not be the easiest thing to talk about. But I think, again, I think that's where the international films kind of always take it for me. A different perspective that I don't really expect or don't really see here. I thought this film was really beautifully shot. I thought the characters were really moving, and I thought the acting from the protagonist here is definitely worth an award.
Another movie about the male ego, but in a totally different perspective, right?
I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. Is we kind of talk about, me and you, in our own private discussions about kind of fragile masculinity, which this film
tackles. But
it's kind of funny
coming of age sense,
to watch
right?
Infinity Pool and watch this kind of back to back, because they tackle what's wrong with the world and how something like misogyny and toxic masculinity can really break down a person. But I think if Close does it through the eyes and through the emotional innocence of childhood, and how you're kind of blinded of those things until a certain moment in your life, until a certain kind of a growing up component happens, whether that's a realization or a moment or an emotional trigger. That's different for everybody, but I thought the film really resonates for somebody who I'm not exactly in the shoes that these kids are, obviously, but the fact that I can still find myself very relatable to the subject matter, I think, is when a film really transcends how good it is, especially if it's in another language.
Nice. So
Yep.
I wasn't expecting to end on such a nice note, but next week will be Knock at the Cabin, and I don't think we've planned too far ahead, but we have mentioned to each other doing a Oscars prediction episode because I don't know if maybe in the previous years I had seen all of the movies that were being considered, but I've seen I think like all but 3 or 4, so I'm down to do the Oscars prediction episode and then the follow up when the Oscars does happen. It'd be kind of fun to see play a little game, see how many we get right.
Yeah.
So expect that. Expect Knock at the Cabin, and who knows what else you'll get soon enough. I know that I don't know. Maybe Ant-Man. I don't know. Can I redeem myself after the Black Panther episode? Who knows if it'll even be worth redeeming? Who knows? Maybe I'll just double down. But that wraps it up for us. So make sure, as always, to like, comment, subscribe. If you have seen the movie, please tell me why we're wrong and it's the best movie ever, or please tell me why I'm also wrong and this is the worst movie you've ever seen. I am open to all discussions. I'll probably just leave your message on red though. So L didn't ask. That does it for us. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for checking back into the Grand Cinema Hotel. I love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.